What's up, everyone? Steven Perva from 7 Nines here, and I want to welcome you back to another recording of the Z Rebels Technical Water Cooler events hosted over at the System Z Enthusiast Discord community. Now, if you're not familiar with what we've got going on over on Discord, I really want to recommend that you jump back to our March recording where we launched this initiative and check it out and see for yourself how cool this event can be and get yourself tapped in. This time around, we started off by talking about everyone's favorite topic du jour right now, which is AI. We talked about how it can help in areas of skilling up, managing complex documentation, as well as real-time monitoring of our ZOS systems. We also talked about education, mentoring, and a favorite topic of ZOS enthusiasts around the globe, which is sandbox environments and viable testing situations. If you're feeling like you're missing out on everything we have going on over at the System Z Enthusiast Discord, I assure you that you absolutely are. I want to encourage you to jump on over to discord.gg/SZE and join us for our May conversation. In the meantime, we hope that you enjoyed these recordings that we have. Get subscribed to us here on YouTube, share this video with a mainframe or technology enthusiast, and leave us a comment or for a topic that you'd love to add to our discussion in May. Or better yet, just join the conversation ourselves, again, by going to Discord or the link in the description. Enjoy the video that we have for you today, and I'll see you on the other side. Boom. Let's see. Frank, can you click your video on?
Yep.
All right. I think we're in it.
Hey. Nothing says you're technical like being able to
just did you try to restart it? All right. Fantastic. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? Let's give like just another 60 seconds to get people filtered back in. Seriously, everyone, my apologies for the difficulties, despite the fact that it was not my fault for once this time. I'll breeze through the little intro and we'll just kind of start from scratch here again. So we'll just kick it off now. Welcome back, everybody, to apparently this is the 6th or 7th Z Rebels Technical Water Cooler because we've started it over about 5 times now. We're meant to be bleeding, like I said, last week, but I was busy, and special thank you to Joe Bastian for being willing to host. This is just a simple conversation for the System Z enthusiast community. The goal of this event is for all of us to be collaborative minds of mainframers around the world to take on industry-impacting issues with the intent to share ideas, share challenges, and ultimately collaborate on where the industry needs to go. If you're going to remember from last time, if you were here, our topic of the event was platform simplification. If you don't recall that, or you want to brush up on the topics outside of this event, the link to the last recording is going to be posted in the reminders that I post every few minutes here. Before we get started, setting up the rules here. First, the general sentiment, mutual respect. Do not disrespect other people in the chat or on voice. There's no tolerance for discriminatory statements on things like race, age, gender, disability, etc. Our rule on elitism is particularly applicable. Do not insult or belittle other people based on their opinions and preferences. There may be strong opinions here, and we all need to respect that. Do not share any information you're unable to share. That's things like intellectual property, topics under NDA, or anything else that you may not have the permission to share should definitely not be discussed in this forum. And finally, everyone here, unless they're specifically called out otherwise, is just an individual that may or may not work at some organization. Their views do not constitute the views of that organization and should simply be considered their own. Next is the topic of recording. Just like last time, this conversation is going to be recording for easier consumption for people who may not be able to partake in this time slot. That recording is going to be published publicly. If you don't want to be part of that recording, now's the time to either obscure your identity, change your nickname, turn your camera off, change your voice, or just outright leave the event. This conversation is all about you, your thoughts, your topics. No topic too basic, nor too advanced, too big, nor too small. And ultimately, participation from all of us decides what topics are discussed. My only ask is that we all try our best to be problem solvers and not just problem identifiers. The format of this event goes like this. Anyone and everyone is welcome to bring a topic to the table for discussion. In a moment, we'll open the floor to someone to bring up our first topic, or Frank and I will introduce something if you're all being a bit too shy, and we'll start chatting about it. If there's something you want to talk about, you're free to post it in the chat or you can just raise your little hand. There should be a hand raise icon there that you can click on, and we'll bring you on stage to share your thoughts. Once you share, we ask that you do leave the stage so that we can have room for other people to hop in. We hit some limit at some point in time, and things feel a bit squirrely today. If you have something further to add and you've left, just raise your hand. We'll bring you right back up. You don't have to have video to participate. That's up to you. If you want to speak, you're definitely going to need a microphone. If you chat and you'd like us to read it out loud, please say, like, please read this or something like that, and we'll get that going. All that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Frank to kind of kick us off. If I've forgotten anything, go ahead and mention that. But Frank, why don't you kind of get us started? And again, thank you all for joining us, and I apologize again for the difficulties that we just had. So thanks.
Yeah, it was great. Maybe Discord could use some Z. I noticed David Rice had a question. He raised his hand early on, so I figured we'd start with him.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm gonna go with potentially a softball, but also I think it could be an interesting discussion topic, and that is, with the ever expanding world of AI kind of popping up, what actual useful things can you actually see as being good potential for it? So obviously, like, a lot of people talk about it like it's this world solving thing, like it could do everything. I don't really believe that, but I think that there are some merits for it. So I'm curious what the rest of the group actually has to say about, like, what are some things you think AI is actually going to be useful for?
Well, I have an opinion. I was kind of hoping maybe somebody else would start.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, Ray hopped on here.
No. I think we need to be clear that what is being called AI really isn't. It's honestly just, a truth table on steroids, a bunch of if-then else's. What it will do, I think, is for a well and narrowly defined business process. For example, fraud detection. That's really the big one. Pattern analysis. It will help there at all, very well. I think chatbots we've seen already where people have gamed the ability to buy a Chevy for $1, or Air Canada actually losing in court because its chatbot made up a funeral ticket fare. Until people realize that AI is a tool and not the definitive answer to a question, we're going to be seeing a lot of problems with it. Having said that, again, as I say, for narrow cases, I think what's called AI and an LLM can be very useful. So that's my thoughts on it so far.
That's definitely interesting input wise. One of the things that and you kind of touched on this a little bit with pattern recognition, but the part that I keep looking at is being a big potential area for how it could help would be log analysis, but also for network analysis. So recognizing patterns that are unique or different inside of both your logs as well as the network, and not just the ability to recognize them, but potentially actually solve the problems as they're coming up or before they even come up, helping rectify the issues as they're going along. That's the kind of stuff that I'm seeing as being potentially interesting in this space. Yeah.
I agree, David. I think it should also, I think it'd be good for things like performance tuning or performance, or autonomic adjustment of the system, or determining what's going on with the systems, either whether it be ZOS or even distributed, determine what the impact could be and actually be proactive in actually fixing or preventing a problem. Instead of having some human wait till it's after it's already had a problem and be retroactive. I think that's a good place to use it as well. I agree. I think AI is just like pervasive encryption was, a lot of hype, but that's my opinion.
We got another
You
voice
bring up
coming in.
it, you bring up infosec, or now you bring up pattern recognition. And infosec, people are looking forward to it because it can look at logs in real time and start seeing patterns of intrusions.
Yeah, but before we get all that really cool stuff, you know what I would like to see? I would like to see AI be able to bring our the mainframe documentation together, because I'm tired of having a problem and having to go through 5 or 6 different manuals to figure out what the hell is going on. If we had something that just was able to bring together the different components, here's the return code, here's the reason code, here's the sense code, or whatever the next, it seems like there are 5 different codes that I need to look at, and generally you have to go to a bunch of different places to find stuff. Having something that just brought all that stuff together would be a godsend for SysProg, I think.
Right.
Don't like ads, ask your SysProg. I definitely do not like that.
Yeah,
Contact IBM support.
yeah, where I see AI being beneficial to the platform would be in tools like OmegaMon or SysView, where these products have hundreds of thresholds that are behind the scenes, that can help monitor or trigger alerts or trigger events that are occurring when a system isn't running within its normal bounds. Actually, Broadcom provided a product, an add-on product to SysView that provides some capability of being able to have pattern recognition and have, the threshold set automatically. But setting those thresholds today is very time intensive and very difficult to adjust. Where I see AI fitting in is being able to understand the behavior of the system's activity over a period of time and then automatically updating those thresholds. We use those for triggering automated ticketing to elevate issues to our system programmers when the system's not running properly or not behaving as expected. That's all.
Frank, I wanted to
agree,
build.
Mike. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Chad.
I was just going to say really quickly, Frank, I wanted to build on yours to extend that a little bit. Learning is a great example as well. So it makes it much easier to learn when you can pull all of these things together in a nice, succinct answer. So that's another benefit there.
Yeah.
I mean, I think AI would be great, and I agree with Mike about the thresholds. So when we first started out a long time ago, we had sysprogs who would actually have to set the stuff up. Systems are a lot more complicated. There's a lot less expertise out there. We need the AI to help us with that learning curve. And most people set thresholds, they never go back to it. For example, WLM. They don't go back and check their service classes. They don't go back and adjust the service classes when an upgrade happens, or they put a new product in and they don't review them. Things like that, or abnormal pattern recognition when there's a scenario that it's outside the norm, or say this job, okay, it runs every month. It ran for 10 minutes this month or for the last 5, but now it ran for half an hour. Those are the kind of abnormal pattern recognitions I think and thresholds would be good. And Frank, I agree with you. I don't like that phrase either, but um, manuals are a big problem as far as trying to find problem. And believe it or not, Broadcom's documentation, no offense, Ray, is a lot better than IBM's documentation as far as finding solutions and finding issues.
Yeah, but to be fair, that bar is in hell.
Oh yeah, that is not very high. I agree.
I gotta say, having looked at our documentation a lot lately, I'm not pleased with it. I can see definitely the different way we write stuff, and it's definitely better than some things, but there are some other parts of it, and I'll be frank, I have seen quite a few errors in the documentation, and I've opened up internal doc update requests. But It's a different era now. I remember back in my day, there were usually two manuals for languages. There was the user's guide and the language reference. And that was it. And you just had to know which one of the two simple manuals you had to go to. And now there's just this explosion of manuals, like Frank said. And I was trying to find FTP server exits. And I opened practically every communications server manual just trying to find what I needed.
There's
So,
And I guess the point I
thought-
would, David.
Go ahead, Jerry. Go ahead.
All
It's fine.
I was going to say was David or Ray. I agree. I guess what I was referring to is that Broadcom is more put a lot more information into problem diagnostics or problem tickets.
Mhm.
They're available on the web more than what I've seen from IBM's, even with Shop or with ServiceNow. So they're a little bit more complete as far as that goes.
Yeah, actually, that's part of our support thing is that if they, when they get a solution, part of the post-closing checklist is to add it to our knowledge base. And I am very impressed with that. I should say searchable knowledge base.
Yeah, so I would say that we're going to have this issue of documentation being crappy until computers no longer exist, in my opinion. Like, this is just I've never quite seen documentation that I would say was good documentation. I've seen decent, but like never great documentation, right? One thing that we're trying to do internally in like some of the areas playing with AI is actually do customized documentation based on the needs of that particular user or application. So it actually, like, you have a quick chat with a chat bot kind of a thing, and then based off of your information, it actually tailors the experience based off what you're trying to do. I'm not saying that this is anywhere near perfect of what it should be, but at least it's helping or attempting to provide the correct information to the person that needs it versus here's like 8,000 documents that you have to just sort through. Here's a little bit of a tailored list that might help you on your journey.
And one of the key problems with the documentation is that it's not searchable. If you could find what you're looking for with a search engine, it wouldn't be as painful. But it's particularly pain, and even if you use, for example, IBM Docs, if you use the internal one, that one also doesn't always yield the proper results. So kind of back to what Frank said, I see, basically having an AI, model that, I mean, there's already, open models that could help you find this information to some degree today, right? Using, the one built in the DuckDuckGo or Microsoft or whatever. But just getting to the relevant information to begin with is a challenge, and that at least helps a little bit, and it doesn't require us to, completely redo what we've done with our docs.
I think there's a few themes going in the chat right now about making just discovery of things a little simpler. There's a conversation saying, I wish IBM would build a personal chatbot which can help subject matter experts and solution architects with some situations without having to skim through a boatload of rad books. And I think that kind of taps into Ray's point about I was looking for information on an FTP exit, and here I am literally buried in comm server documentation. Sure would have been neat to just talk to a chatbot and say, hey, point me to the relevant bits of doc on the FTP exits. Or for this case, I'm trying to upgrade this product, and the product has likely changed its name 7 or 8 times between the time you last touched it and now. What does that look like today? And having a bot or something lead you to that conclusion would be absolutely helpful.
Well, I'm not a real sysprog, right? I only play one on TV, but every time I've done that job, finding the reason why something happened has been the biggest problem. And an error code is almost useless, and even the reason code can be not all that helpful. And so you end up trying to find, a bunch of different clues from a bunch of different books, and the books point you to other books. And to me, that whole process, even if something recommended me to the first book, is really not very helpful, right? So yeah, I've got a starting point, and the starting point is kind of the easy part. It's after that. It's having to follow the trail of breadcrumbs to figure out where the real problem is. To me, is worse than gee, it's a com server thing. At least I have a starting point, but that's not really useful, right?
Yeah, there's some comments about moving towards solution-oriented documentation as opposed to product-oriented documentation.
Right.
That's a good topic that you bring up, Senthil, and I think Ray had touched on it about hallucinations. I think that would probably be the biggest hurdle to a lot of this is how do you manage hallucinations and saving people from themselves when they trust a hallucination? Is it just explicitly pointing them to a resource and leaving the onus on them to actually do that investigation and not basically having authoritative statements like this is how it works or this is where the relevant information is? Maybe that's the solution to fighting off those hallucinations.
One thing, though, I'll say, and I love the idea that, yeah, we do need solution oriented, but in every enterprise's environment, solutions, just because of the extreme differences, solution has to be tailored to the specific environment. Sure, all the banks, I'll say B of A, US Bank, my credit union, they all have business processes that are generally from a high level wind up being the same. The way it's been implemented, though, has been completely different. Some may be using MQ, some may be using entire from Software AG or web methods. And you couldn't necessarily have a generalized IBM documentation solution AI engine. The problem there then is that takes up CPU power. That's expensive, and we've already seen businesses since the early 90s have found training anathema. And again, that's will businesses invest in that sort of thing? I'm not, to be honest, I'm not sure.
Well, I think first of all, I agree with you. I think the whatever is helping me debug problems has to be heuristic. It has to start to get better and better at understanding the environment it's in order to be in order to help diagnose issues. Right. I think if it doesn't have that component to it, that it's always going to be way too general. But if the tooling was smart enough to be able to take, hey, this has happened before, and really start to take advantage of that, that would be useful, right?
How much of our environment data would we be willing to send into the cosmos to be able to have tailored insights like that? Like, I know that COSMF had a big struggle about even getting feedback on the tool because people want it to be like absolutely anonymized. Everything potentially identifying needs to be completely ripped out. So I think that there's a privacy bit of conversation that we have to have about getting custom insights, not to mention how much does it cost to run this local to our system if we're having these types of insights being tailored to our big complex environments.
That's fair. And that's why I honestly believe, and one of the reasons why I think this channel is so important is that we need to grow the community to support each other. And look, AI is great and cool, and it's going to help. but nothing is going to be more valuable than having a group of people who can support each other through this, right? To be able to say, "Oh, I've seen something similar before, and I think if we did X, we did X, you should try it too," kind of thing would be more useful. I do believe that AI will only provide so much value, and at some point, you really need to have people um, helping each other out.
Yeah, and that's a huge point, Frank, and I appreciate that. And I'm very appreciative to everybody who's contributing to this community and having conversations and solving problems. The big difference I see about this community with other mainframe communities is that I think our ethos is typically help first, provide documentation second, right? It's about giving people assistance and then making that into a teaching moment. And that's something I think that I try to enforce around here, as opposed to just throwing people to the bookshelf and saying, figure it out. Oh, if you don't understand how to do this, you shouldn't be doing this. That's not really the attitude that we want to have around here. So I'm absolutely grateful for everybody in this community for making it what it is. It's really nothing to do with me and everything to do with all of you.
Yeah, and to underline that kind of ethic, we're entering a time when the sysprog with decades of experience, that era is going to be over soon, right? And we're going to have a continuous group of young sysprogs, people who are new to this, that just will never have that benefit. And so this community becomes extremely important in that world, because we need to be supporting each other. We can save the nastiness or IBM main and leave the support here, right?
So, what I'm about to say, I don't know how to say this without potentially risking confusing people. My sentiment is not that I'm wanting everyone to leave, but I'm actually looking forward to the day where you just described was actually the truth, where um, we don't have sysprogs that have decades of experience, mostly because I want to see what kind of ingenuity this next generation is going to have as far as this space goes, because there's going to be a put up or shut up kind of aspect of this. There has to be, right? Like, you can't, like, there's no way around that. And so because of that, I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. Out in the world. And obviously, I'm not trying to rush everyone out, and I definitely like some of the thoughts and ways we are trying to prepare for that happening. But there's never going to be a perfect knowledge transfer from the one group to the next. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. That's all.
Well, and beyond that, I think, Dave, that one of the things that happens is when you answer a question, you bring all the bias that you've built up in that, right? So we've always done it this way is always a killer to innovation. And maybe the way we solved it was great in the 1980s, but there's another way, a new way, and that will be really cool. And I also think that a group of people who don't know that they shouldn't do something can sometimes come up with some really cool things. And the conventional wisdom can often keep you from seeing really cool solutions. So I think it's important.
I agree with you, Frank. I mean, and also David. I mean, I don't like to stifle people's ideas or people's thoughts, because they may have it, whether they're old, new, or outside of the platform, because they may have a different opinion or different point of view. It may bring some really good insight into the system. I don't I like to solicit ideas. I mean, I don't mind putting stuff forward. Then I really want people's ideas and their thoughts. I have seen too many times where somebody's new, smacked down so many times that they stop presenting ideas.
Right.
I want those ideas because those ideas, I mean, and Frank, you know this internally at CIO, we have a bunch of new folks coming just out of college, us working on the platform, working on new things, and the way they are doing things is different the way I was doing it. But it doesn't make their way better or worse than mine. It's just a different point of view. We need
Right.
to we need to solicit those point of views. We need to make sure that they're incorporated into the, let them fail, let them come up with ideas, let them try something different. That's the idea of letting them grow with the platform.
I think
Yeah.
that kind of digs into what Darren Search had said about the importance of coaching and mentoring. I think you have to have kind of this constructive learning attitude when you teach people. One of the most effective things that I've been on teams, believe it or not, where I've been the most senior person, the person with the most tenure. And for me, when I get brought a question about how do I do A, B, or C, or what happens if I enter quiesce as the operator console command, I'll say, let's give it a go and just see what happens. I think that this will happen. And what they end up doing is they learn something from it. Well, how do we recover from this wait state I just put the system in? It's like, well, let's figure that out together. Half the time I learn something just letting people fall flat on their face. And I'm a parent of a 5-year-old, and honestly, I learned by watching her fail a lot too. And it's that's the right way to teach, I think, because 1, it's fun, 2, it's exciting, and 3, it's interesting for people who see someone that they believe as an expert to not know everything. And being willing to admit you don't know everything is a very powerful tool to being a good teacher, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I pulled Emma in here. I don't know if she was willing, but because she's young, and to your points, Frank, about this whole kind of knowledge transfer through the generations, I'm hoping she has some, a good perspective on this.
I have a lot of thoughts on learning and documentation. A thing that really annoys me is when I don't see any examples in documentation. Like, I don't learn very well with these like abstract like explanations of stuff. I'm like, okay, this doesn't mean anything to me. Even like you don't need to document like make an example for every single thing you could do with the command or whatever you're documenting, but like just a few examples of some like wildly different things, and then I can fill in the gaps from there. That's very useful to me. So I'd really like to see that more. And not like the IBM side in general is like very slow and weird to navigate. Like often the examples on like a different page, and then I have to like wait for that page to load in, and it takes forever just to find anything. So I'd like to have that like simplified a little bit. That would be very nice.
Yep, that's the story of my life.
Yeah.
All day. Click, wait for it to load. Click, wait for it to load. Try to back out of that page. It doesn't work.
We run those on a PCAT. That's why.
I think there are people, we need to understand that there are people who learn 2 different ways. Some people are visual, and some people are can read it. Most of the people that I've run across that are sysprogs are mostly visual. Reading the documentation doesn't do squat for me. When they do put in examples, like Emma was saying, the examples are bogus. They aren't really real world experiences. It doesn't help. I agree. We need to work on how do we transfer the knowledge down to these folks. And I think Emma's been going through a lot of training classes, and I'm curious to see what her experience is with those training classes as well. She's very vocal, which is really great.
Like, it frustrates me that a lot of the great stuff you can find on Interscale isn't that well documented a lot of the time. Like, sometimes I learn something in Interscale, and then I'm like a few weeks later, I'm like, oh, I want to look up and read up on that, and it's like I can't find anything on it, and it's like, why isn't why isn't like basic information about like sysplex or whatever like publicly available? Like some of it can be found in Redbooks, I guess, but I would like some like more publicly available information.
This is
Let me ask you a question,
exactly
Emma.
why
Would
I
it be
say
helpful? Yeah. Would it be helpful to have examples, but then a place to try out the examples, like we do with Python, like we do with other things, right?
yeah, but that's the same problem that I have. You can't search for it again. It's like a thing that you learned about before and you want to refresh on it, and it's not searchable. You can't find it even if you do know the right keywords. That's why I said that's the first problem to begin with.
I've always kept a running log of commands that I find and keep them housed somewhere that I can find them quickly. Searchable. Yeah, I do that on my own.
Right, but in this day and age, you can't it's not, you don't have a bookshelf full red books, right? You go to your favorite search engine, you look it up, right? That's usually, even if whether or not the documentation's useful, most other things you get relevant search hits. A lot of time for the Z stuff, you just don't get relevant search hits, and it turns into a game of trial and error for 10 to 20 minutes.
Wouldn't it be cool if the people here created a cheat sheet, right, of commands, and we had kind of a repository that people could use to look up? But a few of us created a USS cheat sheet that gives you kind of, here's stuff that we normally use, and how it can help you. But I sure wish I could have that same kind of thing for commands, useful commands that we use from a ZOS perspective. I think that would be a really cool thing.
Mr. Darren Search has joined the stage. I'm curious to hear your opinions, Darren. Here, I want to give you some space to hop in if you'd like.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, I'm sitting here joyously listening to this conversation. I'm trying not to butt in because there's so much interesting stuff being said. Apologies for being camera off as well. I'm definitely not camera ready this morning.
You're good.
Yeah, one gentleman a minute ago was talking about people learning two different ways, and I absolutely hear what he's saying. But I think there's dozens of different subtleties around the way people like to learn, and I've always thought that learning is like a delicious meal that you go to a restaurant. There's so many subtleties in the way you like to learn, and it should be a full spread of of going to share conferences and having a coach and a mentor, or multiple coaches and mentors, and e-learning available all the time. Thank you, Emma, for what you were saying, and reference and so on and so forth. So all of the above. I think the thing we need to be careful of, and as a training organization, this is what we look at, is the accuracy or the suitability for purpose of the information. And that's the problem with chatbots, garbage in, garbage out. You've got to be so careful about the stuff in there, because there's always the potential for someone getting on a chatbot and going, oh, the chatbot told me to enter this command, and you enter this command, and then everything comes, flames start shooting out the side of the mainframe. So you need to be careful with things like that, and cheat sheets and so forth. There's an awful lot of stuff around if you look for it online on the mainframe, but how do you know whether it's accurate or not? You've just got to be really careful. And I suppose it always comes back to coaching and mentoring, and having someone you can, it's not like back in the day when you had to walk down 2 flights of stairs and go to an office and try and find your coach or your mentor. These days you should be able to ping somebody on Slack or something really, really quickly and say, hey, have you got 5 minutes? I need to find out about this or that. And it may not be instant, but if you're close with your coaches and mentors, or if you've got a group of coaches and mentors or people you can reach out to on LinkedIn, then you've got some sort of a ready reference of people who really know because of experience and so forth, and you use that as a resource. And I'll shut up now because I can talk on this subject for hours and I'll bore everybody.
Somebody new joined the stage. We have an extra opinion that we'd like to add here.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
perfect. I would like to build on what Darren said, and it's been mentioned already. It's with regards to AI hallucinating and stuff, and we have to be careful with, like, with the garbage in and garbage out and the chatbots. But I think we forget that when we want to find something, we go to Google or other search engine, we look for a solution, and at the end of the day, we have to also understand what the provided solution is, and to trust that the person gave the solution is going to work. So at the end of the day, it does not matter to me whether the chatbot provides a solution or is it a person on a forum saying something. You still have to verify. I will be the one responsible for it. So to me, it's a secondary thing because people also hallucinate and with giving their solutions, or they think that's the solution. So we shouldn't expect the AI to be this thing that will give us definite answer, like, yeah, do this. If we want to go this way, then we shouldn't be asking. They will do it for us, right? So if you want to have it as a help for us, we still have to be cautious, be it a chatbot or be it as an answer on a forum or being a response on a Discord, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good
My
point.
point is that shouldn't hinder us. That shouldn't hinder us from exploring this route, because it's not very different from what we have now, but that could bring us a lot more benefit in our everyday job, right?
Right. I think that there's a whole element of discovery that we have to kind of set up, because there are so many knobs and switches in things like ZOS that it's hard to give strong advice. As someone who builds products for the company I work for, when I'm writing documentation, half the time I'm spending it saying, like, if you're looking for this bit of information, these are the steps you take to discover this in whatever environment you happen to be in. And I think that because of the number of switches and things that you can change and the customization, it's hard to give sound, works for everyone advice. And that's what we need to kind of focus on with that platform simplification topic we had, whatever it was, 3 weeks ago or something.
Yeah, there is that subtlety across different organizations as well. I mean, things will be different depending on the organization, process and procedure, and commands and modifications and automations and different things. So there's always, I absolutely agree that you've got to learn and then sort of verify, but eventually you got to trust somebody. So you got to have that source that you can trust to know what to do, because otherwise, if you read something or learn something and say, okay, this is the solution, but I've got to verify it, and you go off to somebody else, then the verification could be wrong, and then what you originally heard could be right. So you've got to try and have one trusted source, and IBM's always been that, and Red Books have always been fantastic, and they've always been clunky and hard to navigate and so forth, but it's amazing information that you can trust. I hesitate to use the word of the book beginning with B, but it is that book.
I think that also emphasizes the need for viable testing environments as well. So, and the ability to spin them up, use them, discard them, and be able to try these things out before you're slapping that command to a prod environment at 2 a.m, hoping that you can figure out what the consequences might be if it goes sideways.
Yeah. That's the holy grail, isn't it, Steve? I went to an session at Share a couple of shares ago, maybe. That was Frank and Steven were up on stage for that one, and that was one of the overwhelming responses from everybody in the crowd was, how can we get some sort of a place where we can get on and practice? This is the best way to learn, is just to get on and try these things and practice and so forth. It's incredibly hard. Take it from somebody in the training industry. It's expensive. It takes a lot of administration and so forth. But if we can ever crack that code, it would be a phenomenal training and an ongoing reference resource.
So
I know there's been a lot of work done in that area. There's certainly the interest the interest is there. A lot of companies understand that that things can't continue the way it's going. How we make that happen is going to be interesting, because IBM is going to make sure that people aren't using those environments inappropriately, right? So coming up with the right way to do that is, I think, part of the issue.
So this reminds me of a discussion we had about open containers the other day, right? I mean, it only supports like USS stuff at the moment, right? But the way I could see that being useful, because I'm mostly in development too, and if you need a system that you can just mess around with, takes 10-20 minutes to set up a ZVM virtual machine, right? Because you have to set up a whole virtual machine. So if we could get open containers to like near equivalent of like just throwing together an Ubuntu container equivalent on Linux, then I think that would give you what you need. You can just play around and mess with everything. If you crash it, it's just a container. Try again and experiment, because that's how you learn, right? That's what people were talking about on here, right? You experiment and you learn from trial and error. That's how you learn.
I was working on that,
A little bit more difficult for sysprog activities, though, because
right, but there, if there's a dedicated place where people can log on and throw together these experimental containers, right? It
should
you wouldn't do it on a
spin up a
production
ZOS the same
place,
way.
right?
And I agree with you. You should be able to spin up a ZOS like we do for other platforms. And that should be able to spin up, let people play with it, let people deal with it. I mean, this is one of the things that we've had discussions internally when I was there. You need a way to make ZOS specifically more accessible, so that we can accommodate people to go play with things. Let them learn on their own. We don't want them to teach. Most times, if you're in a client and on ZOS, they're not going to let you play with a system because there's no resources available. You need a way to have those resources to be available, so anybody can go out there and play or test something they want to try with.
That's why I was saying, like, if you could get open containers to something that's more or less like kind of a complete instance of a ZOS running on Vicom, like the equivalent, that would make it much more inexpensive to do, right? But I mean, it's easier said than done, right? I know ZOS isn't a Linux, right? But
ZOS can be done that way. It's just going to take concerted effort to get it there. That's the problem.
Right, but
it can be done.
My point is the reason why containers are so great is because they're so lightweight. I forget what the exact name. I think it's Union File System they call it, right? And they have this whole system that makes them so super lightweight. So it's nothing to just throw one together and take it down and throw another one up, right? And I believe you could I don't know what they do on the USS side to set up that stuff in USS, but you also need the quote unquote I know side isn't the right terminology because it's the same system, but the MVS side of things, right? Kind of a complete system that's isolated to you.
Agreed, and that's one of the biggest problems we have. And if you look at, doesn't matter whether you have somebody new to ZOS, but if you're at a client doesn't have resources for people to go out and play with things. Most of the shops that I've been in, they have some resources, but they're difficult to have a place where you can even do DB2 upgrade, for example. Try out new parameters or teach somebody how to IPL. Those are typically not something you want to have somebody doing.
That's part.
Exactly.
So we have.
That's what I was saying. Sorry, go ahead.
We have a new voice on the stage. I want to give them an opportunity to chime in here. So If you just joined, I believe Felipe Gama here. Why don't we give this a go here and see if you have something you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot for having me here, and it's a pleasure to be with you all here. Guys, and related to this topic, I'm right now training 6 persons to be a system programmer, right? For our team, but we have clients, right? Like Steve was Edge was saying, right? So what is the fear? And it's a roadblock right now, right? Where the more experienced sysprogs, they have the fear to give access to the trainees, you know? So, and what we are seeing here is like, oh, we think that they should have the same access that we do, right? Obviously, we need to be like on top of them where they are sharing their screen, and come on, you will only hit enter if I say you to do, right? But this has been a hard point to go through, right? So what is our options here now, at least because they are with us for 3 weeks already, and they didn't access any TSO yet, you know? So and so we have to be pushing. So what I'm doing right now was, well, I have to get them access to some real mainframe system, right? So even though that they are having the entry skills and everything, right? Unfortunately, entry skill doesn't provide you access to a real mainframe system yet. I think that's something that they should work on still. But the option that we are seeing right now is the IBM Z Explorer platform, right? So I asked them to all get access to the platform, right? So now we can at least have a TSO session, so they can connect, issue some commands, and even though yes, they are being trained to be a system programmer, and on the IBM Z Explorer, you won't they won't have access to like shut down a DB2, configure something else, right? But at least they have something to do and to be interacting with the mainframe, right? So we have a plan to give them access to our client sandbox, right? But even to the sandbox, they are still afraid of giving them this access, right? So this is a really difficult point when we are training new people to become a mainframer, right?
Right. And thanks for adding that. And I want to just kind of point out that we're in the final looks like 60 seconds of our gathering here today. And I know we got off on a shaky start here. And I'm super grateful that we had a ton of folks join the stage and add their opinions that were new to the community. So thank y'all so much for having that bravery to come up and speak in front of everybody today. Is there any closing thoughts or anything anybody wants to add to the conversation before we start to kind of shut down? If you have somewhere to go, you don't have to stick around, but I'm willing to stick around for a few more minutes since we went a little bit late today.
Yeah, I'll be here as well.
Hi, Steven. This is Sam Knutson. Thanks for bringing me onto the stage. And the one thing that kind of jumps out after listening, and thanks for organizing this event, you and Frank as well. I think it's a great forum. But you hear a lot of the themes, it seems, that repeat, from event to event. And one of them, and maybe the most simplest, is that this is an unsolved problem, because I hear various vendors and executives tout, one program or one technology as, this is solving the mainframe skills problem. And I think that almost everyone on here would agree this is an unsolved problem, and that there has not yet been a silver bullet fire that takes care of it. And you also hear the same things about need to an easy, cheap, cheap in that there's no business impact environment to practice both programming and systems administration. There's better needs for better docs, so it's probably not going to be one thing. And above all, a need for a positive environment. And there's certainly some legacy lists that have some wonderful experts who share helpful advice, and then they have some very caustic folks that tend to discourage people who need that advice from participating. So I don't have an answer, but I just see these themes over and over again, and I think there's an opportunity for someone, at a high level in the Z business to state some of that with and set maybe new expectations for customers that if you're going to operate these systems, you're going to need to spend some resources and money, and we don't dictate that you get the solutions only from us, but you're going to need to provide these things, and here's a few ways we see it. And I don't know that those templates are entirely formed up yet, but something akin to Bill Gates's trustworthy computing memo, except for future growth of the mainframe workforce memo from a Z business leader at the top of IBM, ideally joined by maybe a couple other industry leaders, if you're looking for crazy ideas that might sort of change the perception of CIOs about how they're going to staff their mainframe, because most of them would say that things that we're collectively wanting are not possible. You can't have that. So just a thought.
And an important one, right?
Yeah, I agree. I know that Lionel Dyke wanted me to plug there's a community post. Lionel, if you want to post that again, he's posturing for maybe some idea he's put out there about getting easier access to a limited license to use kind of these sandbox environments. And I think it's really surrounding this notion of, there was a conversation earlier in the Discord community where someone said, if I wanted to show off something like that I can spin up a quick COS through something like Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform, it's hard for me to compete with other technologists in my organization because they can just jump over to wherever, spin it up, and show an executive that, hey, I've done kind of that shadow IT bit. I've made this work. Now you just have to make the investment. That really doesn't fly in the Z world, at least ZOS world. It's hard to just spin up a ZOS and show, hey, look, I can make this work, or spin up a whole Kix region. Hey, I can make this work, or a DB2 subsystem. Yes, I can make this work. Now you just need to invest. I think that's where investment comes from, is kind of that sandboxing and that in shadow IT, for lack of a better phrasing. And I think that we need to have some sort of, maybe Sam, you'd point this out, we need to have some way of kind of combating that ourselves, so that we can show something and say, hey, it does in fact work. Here's the POC. I spent time because I love what I do, and I'd like for you now to allocate resources and invest in this space.
Well, and I think it's going to be more critical going forward, because I won't always have the 30-year veteran sitting next to me to coach, right? I need to have some place to try it, and without it, I'm just going to be bringing down the system, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes good business sense, right? It's definitely cheaper to have a test system go down regularly than your production system go down regularly.
Yeah, really well said, Frank. And this may be a controversial comment and a snarky one from me, but if organizations were willing to look at it like that and put the money behind what they say is their fear of the mainframe skills crisis, because 30 years of doing this, I've always, some companies are fantastic and they really invest in education and so forth, but other companies are just cheapskates when it comes to training. They want the Rolls Royce, but they want to pay for the beat up old used car.
Yeah.
And if companies were to look at it strategically and really honestly say, okay, this is of critical importance to the future of our organization because we are staying on the mainframe. There's nothing else that can compete with the mainframe for what we do. Then they'd be putting a whole lot more money behind training and not trying to skimp and save, because you can bring up sandboxes, and if you put people on it and money behind it and have all of the training tools and get people really involved and develop a culture of learning at your organization and put your money where your mouth is, then absolutely solvable. But not on a budget when people say, yeah, maybe we'll do training next year. We haven't got any budget for it this year. So
Yeah.
anyway, I'll shut up now.
And no, it's bad when you have champagne tastes and a beer budget, right? So, but I think your point is an important one, right? Is that it's doable. You just have to have the will to do it. And yeah, it's going to be an investment, but it's a much less investment, smaller investment than you think compared to outages, right?
Absolutely.
Looks like we're in our final 3 minutes. We're going to close at 9:10 in Central U.S. time today because we did start a bit late. I am going to leave the floor for any final thoughts. We have a question in the chat. What are the steps to replace COBOL programmers? I know IBM has IBM Watson X that possesses the ability to translate from COBOL to Java, but it is not perfect. That seems like a complex tail end conversation to have.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
That sounds like a good thing to start the next one on, because that is an argument waiting to happen. Right?
Absolutely. Okay, so if anybody has any final comments they want to add, Marcus dashes out of the room. Please do so now, because otherwise we're going to kind of wrap this up in 2 minutes.
I just want to say thanks again for everybody. You know, I'm up at 0600 for these things, and it is totally worth it, even with the dogs that demand attention. But yeah, again, thanks for everybody who showed up, and those of you who were brave enough to step up on the stage and speak. I know Steven has to, goes through a lot to prepare these things, and also, thank you, Frank, for allowing your little internal chat sessions become external. And definitely, looking forward to the next one. And yeah, we definitely have our topic, but I do want to say that the Watson X can also generate COBOL. Just want to make that clear. It can generate Java. It can generate COBOL. I believe there are also other languages in process from what I've seen.
Yeah, well, we can start with that battle on the next call, because I think it will be a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Ray, for extending our gratitude to everybody. We have tons of channels off on the sidebar there. If you'd like to keep this conversation going, I'm going to go ahead and close down the event here. I have a recording. I'm actually going to be in California enjoying a little bit of vacation time next week, so don't rob my house if you know where I live. But I will try to get the recording posted as soon as possible. So thank you all so much for being here. Again, thank you all for coming up on the stage. I echo exactly what Ray said, and we will see you on the next one, everybody. Thanks again. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
What an amazing conversation. Thank you for sticking it out with us. And again, I want to remind you to join the System Z Enthusiast Discord by either checking the link in the description of this video or going to discord.gg/SZE. While you're at it, why don't you pop over to www.7nines.com, where you can find all of the different 7-9's modern mainframe culture resources. We got more videos like this one, we got educational articles, and we even have our merchandise shop where you can get dope t-shirts like this, cool posters like this, amazing mugs like this one. We got stickers for your laptop. We got all sorts of different cool mainframe enthusiast things that you might want to check out. Again, subscribe to the channel and get yourself plugged in, and we'll see you next time. See ya.